All right, it's going.
Knock, knock.
Who's there? Thunk Tank Podcast. Welcome to the Thunk Tank Podcast. Episode 2, I guess?
Episode 2, official.
We'll figure out what the title is when we figure that out.
Well, we have to do it, I suppose, yeah.
We're doing it now.
Right.
We're thunking it now. Let's start off with what beer we're drinking. We started drinking already, by the way, folks.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those.
If you're at home, crack a beer and listen while you're drinking. Yeah. It will help vibe.
Anything but Heineken.
No, even if it's a Heineken. If that's all you have in your fridge, go for it. All right, so Johnny, what beer are you drinking?
I'm drinking a very dark red ale that I made.
Johnny's red ale?
Oh, jeez.
What's the percentage?
Ralph's Red, it's about 6.5. It's got this like nice dark cherry flavor to it.
Nice.
Oh yeah, the Ralph's Red. You brought one of those
Ralph's
up,
Red,
didn't you?
yeah. No, I brought up Thanks Obama. But
I thought I had the Ralph's Red. Was that when I was down there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Ralph's Red Ale. So it's a nice red ale.
Our beer is also 6.5%.
Consistent.
It is the Sloop Brewing DDH Juice Bomb. DDH means double dry hopped.
Right.
Have you heard of them, Johnny?
You can just say double dry hopped, I mean.
I mean, the title is like DDH Juice Bomb.
It saves you one syllable.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to be late for my flight next week because I just saved all that time.
He's been planning ahead.
Good point. What brewery?
Sloop Brewing.
Sounds familiar.
It's from Elizaville, New York.
Okay.
Seems pretty small. Like, I'm checking the logins on Untappd, and there's only like less than 400 ratings total, so it must be pretty new brewery. I haven't researched it. But anyways, me and Joe got this out of a growler, so this might be an interestingly thunk tank.
Yeah, we're doing some thunking.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of this sloop?
It's a juice bomb, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this is about the haziest beer I think I've ever had.
Yeah, it's pretty
the way
hazy.
I described it is
if I try
Venusian atmosphere thick.
That's what you were saying before.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say.
I was setting up the mic and Joe's saying the word Venusian at me, and I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
He's like, what are you talking about? Venetian blinds? And no.
He's saying that the haziness, the thickness of this beer is about as hazy as the atmosphere of Venus.
There's
a lot of like solids in there.
Yeah.
This is like a meal of a beer.
Yeah, it almost tastes like cold soup.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, gazpacho.
Exactly.
So,
it's the gazpacho of juice.
Ooh, let's make a hazy hop bomb soup and call it hop spacho.
If by we are you going to start?
If by we you mean you, then I will drink it.
Yeah,
I might do it. Yeah, I might do it and give credit.
You know, Johnny, you could become the official beer sponsor of this podcast for.
I think I am at so far, just because I know we got a donation 6-pack from one of our beta tests, but I technically supply all of my beer for my ends of it, so it's 2 in a row that I'm providing my own beer. So I guess I'm sponsoring myself.
Your lead sponsor right now.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I want credit as first sponsor. Yeah, I'll send you guys some beer.
Yes.
By courier because you can't mail beer, so I'll just deliver it, and you'll save some for our cast. Yeah, that's a small operation.
That's fair.
So, we're going to start each episode, if it's needed, with a thunked correction
also known as
section.
Thunk-rections.
Joe really wants to call this thunked rections.
That's not what I said.
Oh.
Thunked rections.
What did you say?
Thunk-rections.
That's no different.
That sounds like a pill at the gas station that
it
increases stamina.
It just sounds. It has more to do with erections than it does have to do.
I'm going to start a poll on our Twitter, and we'll see what the people think. How about
fair enough? Yeah.
How about thunkerations, like instead of alterations?
Thunkerations.
That's not bad.
That could work.
But it sounds like you're thunkeracing.
Anyways, the point is we do drink a lot of beer while recording these, so we're bound to make some errors /
say shit
that just might not be true. I don't lie on purpose, but anyways. So these two I caught while I was editing. If you catch anything, email us. Our email will be like below any of the YouTube videos or wherever else
there's
we
an email,
post things.
Yeah.
we would love to hear like a correction of something, and then we'll say it on the next episode for sure. Unless you're the fucking idiot and what we said was true, then you can go fuck yourself, right?
That's also entirely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
you never know.
We were talking last episode about like the NASA budget and like Curiosity rover and what that cost.
Yeah.
So Curiosity rover was only $2.5 billion.
Yeah.
I say only because like, you know, the U.S. military budget per year is $600 billion.
Wow. That's a lot of Curiosity rovers.
I said something like 1 month of military spending is more than the running budget of NASA, but that was not true. It's 1 year of military spending is more than the, 50-something year running budget of NASA. Right. NASA was founded in 1958, and its budget now is like $20 billion a year.
Yeah.
So the running budget is about the same as what the U.S. spends on military every year, not every month. It's still a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
The point still holds true, but it's not quite as much.
Well, that was the whole point, regardless of the actual magnitude. We spend way more money on bombs than we do cool robots in space.
Than we do on, like, controlled bombs that launch rockets to the moon or something.
Yeah, which is kind of sadly ironic when you think about it.
So, Pop Quiz Joe, who is the second highest military spender in the world? We're at $600 billion a year, roughly.
It's got to be China or Russia.
Is it NATO?
China is second, and Russia is third.
Bam!
China is second at $215 billion, and Russia's third at $70 billion.
Yeah.
But that's nuts, because Russia has, like, what? I think less people than the U.S., right? And definitely less wealth and resources.
Yeah, but they've been at it for a while.
But, even if you measure it as a percentage of GDP, I think we're still highest. So,
well, and we have, like, those crazy numbers where we have, like, more aircraft than the rest of the world combined in our Air Force.
Yeah.
Nobody else is even close.
The largest Air Force in the world is? Do you guys know?
It's probably the United States, but I know there's an interesting glitch where North Korea is really high up there, too.
Well, we have the largest number of... eventually we'll get overtaken because we're more about like making planes that are like drones that can shoot lasers. It's like, you don't need 15,000 of those. You just need a dozen.
Yeah, you need one with a laser that points in every direction.
Yeah, and it's like that's way more powerful than your F-15s. Yeah, this thing, whatever. But the second largest Air Force is the U.S. Navy's Air Force.
Oh, that's funny.
Because technically, like...
I see.
Things that on, like, aircraft carriers, you're a Navy pilot. You're not usually an Air Force pilot.
Right.
And, I guess the Coast Guard falls under that, too, maybe? I don't know. But the point is, that's the second largest Air Force. So that's pretty insane.
Fair enough. So the other thunk correction to make was, we were talking about, like, when humans split off from... the branch where chimpanzees ended up in evolution. I sort of drunkenly muttered like 300 million years, but it's 3 million years. Like it's like somewhere between 3 to 7 million years.
300 million years would be with Brontosaurus.
Yeah. That was just a thunked brain fart kind of vibe.
You were on the right track. You had the 3.
But I'm going to come back to the monkey thing later for today's topic.
Yes.
What is today's topic, Joe?
Today's topic is the question or problem or issue or reality of happiness. What does that mean?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, why does it mean what it means? There's
it also goes well with like just like words like greed.
Yeah.
Like confused, like seeking of happiness.
Yeah.
And also just like, I think the beer angle that we'll try to bring here is like how to just be a cool person and live a cool life without being too much of a dick along the way.
All right. How to be
And I think beer helps with that. We'll get to that too.
That's been tried and tested for millennia now, probably.
It's been tried and tested for at least coming up on 10 years of my own life.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is happiness. Are you measuring it like quantitatively or qualitatively?
Well, I think the question the first question is what is that? What does that word mean?
Happiness. If you're a fan of Mad Men, like the show. Don Draper, one of my favorite quotes of his, which will go along with the Buddhist angle that I kind of want to take for this question. He says in a meeting, he screams at some executive like, well, what the fuck is happiness? It's just a moment before you need more happiness.
That's gold, yeah.
Which is sort of like the central like idea behind Buddhism, I think. But before getting into Buddhism, there's so many angles to attack this question of what is happiness from. And I think our specialty definitely wouldn't be the academic philosophical angle. I know some philosophy, I know some like brain science and whatever, but
I'm familiar with
it's like a whole language you have to learn how to speak, and you have to be familiar with all the papers and the philosophers.
Well, that's why there's experts.
That's why there's experts, and we can defer to them. And
that's why you were scared to just use the phrase neuroscience, because you're like, I'm really on the brain science level. I'm not a neuroscientist.
Well, I don't even want to drop a word and make it seem like I'm smarter than I am. Like, I just read the internet and try to connect ideas. I realize as I'm writing down notes for the topic of happiness that I sort of use a lot of different lenses to view that idea from, and as consistent as I can make them, I'm happier. So I can see it from a science angle. I can see it from like a meditation, mindfulness angle. I can see it from a beer angle, right? And if all of those can sort of get along in a grander theory of life, I tend to be happy and settled.
Well, that makes sense. I'm looking at an issue or an idea like that from multiple perspectives, right?
Right.
Scientific, spiritual, beer. So
can I read like 2.5 quotes here?
Sure.
To get us kicking on this topic? So one of them is from a comedian I really like named Duncan Trussell. He has a podcast called the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, and he's had a lot of Buddhist teachers on there. And he like sort of goes on rants about life and Buddhism and his experience with meditation and retreats and things like that. So he said these 2 quotes that I really liked. He said, the universe is like a dog. If you're scared or awkward towards the universe, it will snarl at you and attack you. But if you're warm and loving and silly to the universe, it will roll over and show you its belly.
Unless you're flying into a black hole.
Unless the dog's eating your face off. I don't know.
Right, yeah. It's not a nice dog.
But he also said this other one, which is better. If you have dog shit on your shoe, then everywhere you go smells like shit.
Ooh, I like that.
You might think the world smells like shit, but you have dog shit on your shoe.
You're bringing the shit with you.
You're bringing the shit.
Yeah.
So,
how true is that?
You think everybody sucks. You think it smells like shit everywhere, but you just got to clean your act up. Go outside, get a hose, and spray the fucking dog shit off of your shoe. And I mean that as a metaphor, of course.
But also, literally, if there is dog shit on your shoe,
go you should pause the podcast if you can't bring it with you. Go clean the dog shit off your shoes first, then come back to listening to idiots talk on the internet.
I promise you'll like us and our podcast more if you just go clean the dog shit off of your shoe real quick.
But what if they're wearing like sandals or Crocs or something?
If you step in dog shit barefoot, I am sorry. That sucks.
Yeah, that's a tough lot in life.
Yeah. But you got dealt a bad hand,
It's one thing if you're wearing like an army boot that's laced up to your knee, and it's like, well, it's a lot of work to get this off. But if you're just in sandals and you step in shit and you're like, I'm gonna keep these on,
that's a decision.
It's so much easier to just abort the sandal at that point.
Right.
Oh yeah,
I've aborted many a sandal.
No, there are some where it's just like you think to yourself, that's got to go. That's no longer a viable piece of footwear.
And that's a really beautiful moment of letting go, which is part of what I want to get into in Buddhism here.
Yeah, so how does that transition exactly
All right,
to
so
Buddhism?
I just finished a book on sort of mindfulness. It's called Mindful Games by Susan Greenland. Because I'm a music teacher and I wanted to kind of find out ways to bring mindfulness into teaching.
That's a great idea, sure.
So she mentions this story. I'll just say the story real quick. It's a short little thing. Like 2 young fish are swimming through the water, and an older fish swims by and says, "Morning, fellas. How's the water today?" And then the fish swim on, and then like a few moments go by, and one of the fish looks at the other one and says, "What the heck is water?"
The young fish?
Yeah, one of the young fish looks at the other young fish like, "What the heck is water?" And the idea is like, the angle I like to take towards happiness is that it's the really obvious fact of like life that we all overlook.
You mean the fact of just living in life?
The fact of, this is a Sam Harris quote from his book that I think you've read some of.
The waking, what is it, Waking Up? I forget
Waking Up, yeah.
Yeah.
We manage to avoid being happy while struggling to become happy. So this is the fundamental, like, flaw of the human condition, is that we're seeking happiness, and in that process we find ourselves unhappy and always unsatisfied. So we can get back to the Buddhist angle or whatever, but I think we're trying to just give our beer wisdom on, how to attack this problem from different angles. Because I go through the world, I see a lot of unhappy people. I was at the grocery store today. Woo! It can be a dark scene if you just connect what you're seeing. I think a lot of people go through the world and they don't really look at people and take in what they're seeing.
And they don't look at them as people because
it's too painful to look at everyone as a person with a life.
And you see people sort of stuck in these, I guess you would call them just almost like predestined roles, where you can kind of feel the vibe in that sense where, they went to school, they met somebody, they got married, they have kids, they got a job, and they're fucking miserable.
They subscribe to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 checklist of life.
Yeah.
And they're carrying it in their face. There's a heaviness to their energy that I know with me and my friends, we don't really have that. So I don't think beer is the real answer, but it's part of it.
And not to say that any of those things are obviously bad things, but if you're just doing them to do them because that's what you've been brought up to believe is what brings you happiness, and that's not, you don't find that out yourself through your own sort of journey and realizations, that can be a really, like you say, dark sort of existence.
Yeah, and often it's so painful to be, let's say, 40 years old and think to yourself, I kind of regret having kids, or I regret getting married. That's a heavy package to deal with, so most people ignore it.
Yeah, they wind up dealing with it in not good ways down the road.
And this is where I'll get into the mindfulness thing. Actually, I think it could be a whole separate podcast, like Buddhism and meditation and the mind.
Oh, absolutely.
But I just want to sort of touch it for this topic of happiness today. But yeah, people are often more unhappy than they're willing to admit. And I think for me, diving into unhappiness is where it's at. Because if you dive in there, it's not as scary as you might think. And then you come out the other side with a greater, more pure version of happiness.
Yeah, and you have to get to that point through the journey of doubt and the realization that, this sort of just idea of general progression that's going to get you to happiness maybe isn't always how it goes. And
when it's funny you say get you to happiness, because there's a sect of Buddhism, I heard on a podcast, somebody was saying this, enlightenment in Buddhism is where you're no longer chasing anything, right?
Right.
The ego is dissolved. You're no longer chasing after satisfaction. But anyway, often enlightenment itself can be put on this top of the mountain, and it's viewed in this. It's a more refined version of the same problem of chasing happiness.
Right.
So they call enlightenment the final disappointment. It's I'm enlightened. I'm finally arrived, and it's I'm still unsatisfied.
Can I read you a very brief? It's described as a poem. I think I don't know if I would call it necessarily a poem, but thinking about what you were talking about with music. So as a writer,
I talked about music.
Well, you said that.
Oh, teaching. Yeah.
Teaching it as so. I found a quote by one of my favorite authors, Kurt Vonnegut.
I love Kurt Vonnegut.
Fantastic stuff, right? For
almost too good. It's
for any of you who aren't familiar,
this guy was in touch.
He's basically, to me, the Mark Twain of the 20th century. I mean, very satirical, but with very specific messages in mind, right?
Yeah, and brilliant writing style.
Yeah, there's meaning really woven within and throughout everything he writes. So, anyways, I found this brief quote of his from a piece he wrote in the New Yorker about 10 years ago, and it was about Joseph Heller, who, I don't know if, are you familiar with
Catch-22?
Catch-22, yeah.
Yeah.
Another fantastic writer. So, this is what he had to say about Joseph Heller, or Joe Heller, as he called him. So
Joey H.
This poem,
My
I
good
guess,
pal, Joey H.
is titled Joey H.
Joey Hells.
So he says, true story, word of honor. Joseph Heller, an important and funny writer, now dead, and I were at a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island. I said, Joe, how does it make you feel to know that our host only yesterday may have made more money than your novel Catch-22 has earned in its entire history?
Damn.
And Joe said, I've got something he can never have. And I said, what on earth could that be, Joe? And Joe said, the knowledge that I've got enough. Not bad, rest in peace.
Damn.
That was like his eulogy, I guess, to Joseph Heller.
So, it kind of comes back to the idea of, like, if you think, like, oh, I would only be happy if I had X.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, okay, well, let's run the experiment. Go and get X and see if you're happy. It's like, you might be happy for a moment.
Right.
And this gets into the other angle I want to take. I'm not trying to take the philosophy angle or the psychology angle. Like we already said, there are way smarter, more qualified people to do that.
But they don't.
I would love to talk to them sometime, right? One of my favorite things about podcasts is you can talk to smart people. Yeah. We'll put them on the guest list.
Yeah.
Or share this podcast with your friends so that, like, you can hear us talk to smarter people, basically.
Yeah. We're doing this for you.
But I like to be fairly informed about all those things enough to sort of make connections.
And that's what it's about.
I can't go deep in the rabbit hole of literally everything. But, so there's different lenses I like to look through. But, like, that one you just said, I think is also capturing something Buddhism figured out thousands of years ago.
That's really what... I noticed that, too, as you were saying it, that this is something that people do come to realize.
Yeah.
I think independently.
And so lottery winners, why aren't they happy, right? Well, because there are happy lottery winners, of course, right? Yeah. I have almost no money. I'm a musician, and I would say I'm happier than a lot of rich people I know.
Than a lot of rich people, sure, or lottery winners.
Clearly, money is not happiness, but it can
chime in about that part? The money, not happiness?
Yeah, definitely, because you also know about that, right?
Yeah. We're all
more than qualified in the same boat in terms of money.
Yeah, to comment on this topic.
Yeah. So, like, I was also... I've in my early 20s had no money, like none, like triple digits in the bank account at several times.
It's better than double digits.
Well, no, I mean, like, triple digits was a good thing, and then go down to doubles. And if you can get 4 digits, once you're at 4 digits, you're like, I'm basically on vacation for the rest of the week. Like, you just feel like, like, I don't have to worry or panic or. Yeah. But recently I got married and moved, and, like, my wife finally finished school. So we jumped, like, socioeconomic levels from, like, lower middle class to middle class. And which it's but that's the thing. You would think, like, that's probably one of the bigger jumps most people make in their life. Like, I'm never gonna make it. I'm never gonna make it to millionaire status, statistically speaking. It's just not gonna happen for me at this point. Attitude. Also that, I just don't have the drive, and I'm aware of it.
Well, if you don't play the lottery, then no, you won't.
Yeah, Johnny. You definitely won't win the lottery if you don't play, Johnny.
Exactly, and I have not bought a ticket in years, since I started making money, actually.
No ambition whatsoever.
I actually bought a lot of lotto tickets when I had no money. But anyways, but like, now I have a house instead of an apartment, and, like, a dog, and, instead of trying to, like, get a ride from somebody to get to work or whatever. Like, I have a car, my spouse has a car, so technically, you know what I mean? There's just all these more resources that I can pull on. Oh, my car broke. Instead of, like, everything being fucked, I have a fallback. And,
right.
But you immediately just get caught up in the I'm going to quote, I'm not sure which philosopher said it. It was a late 20th century. Mo money, mo problems. And it really is true that, you just, because your brain...
I was ready for, like, a different
I was ready
quote,
for something, like Nietzsche or some shit like that.
No, I think it's valid, though. I think it's
No.
No, it's very
There's a reason why you're saying it now in the 21st century.
I mean, there's a reason a lot of people go to, like, a really simple version of life when they've gone too deep in the wrong direction, like Wall Street, whatever, lots of money, lots of adrenaline. It's like, at that end of the day, the moment when you're closing your eyes to go to sleep, are you really present and grateful and happy, or are you secretly miserable?
It's not so that's what I'm trying to say. It's not that. There are people like that. There's the billionaire that's more pissed about like quarterly reports than he is happy about like his healthy family or whatever. But what I'm talking about is like I like to think I enjoy those moments. It's just you get less of them because you literally, the more stuff you have, the more assets, the more responsibilities, it just takes up more time. Like, oh, I got to clean the cars, oh, I got to cut the lawn, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that.
Keeps you busy and distracted.
Yeah, when you have a shithole apartment that you don't give a fuck about because it's not yours and you're getting ripped off, you know what I mean? Like you don't care about it. You're closer to that like pauper monk mentality of like, well, I can really appreciate what I have because that's all I have. Like
if you have
but
nothing,
you get distracted by all the minutia of it. Like there's so many things I need to do around this house. I just got a shed, so I gotta move all this crap out of my basement into the shed so I can redo the floors in there so we can it's you know what I mean? It's
whereas I'm living in some month-to-month room in a house and I can just piece out any day I want.
Yeah. Whereas I'm thinking like a month ahead, 6 months, a year, 10 years. Like, oh, should we do these floors now? Are we gonna sell it? This, that, blah, blah. It's a whole thing, and like
you have a lot of questions.
Dark stuff, Johnny. Dark stuff.
I'm just saying. So our house is on the edge of like a nice area, but we're right by a parkway with literally like a crackhead motel across the street.
I saw some interesting characters wandering around there.
Yeah, it's complete with the above the in-ground pool that's just drained for decades. It's surrounded in barbed wire. And like it's just a full-on like some of the doors are smashed out on it, and you'll see people go from the gas station across the street. And like when they get money from enough cars, like, you know, the sign, please help, they run back to their motel room probably to go do whatever. So whatever, you see these people, but sometimes you'll just see like a crazy old drunk and he's just happy as shit with his 40 ounce, you know, of natural ice. And he's just laughing and just like singing or whatever. It's like, that guy seems pretty happy. But then like at work we'll get some rich people that come in that aren't happy at all either, or they are. Like
I was going to say, Johnny, we might come back to you with the angle of being like a bartender part-time.
Yeah. You probably see some interesting stories.
I think that's an interesting like cross-section that you get to see of society and of people.
Yeah, you get all sorts of socioeconomic...
From the happiest of people to sort of darker situations where like the same guy comes every day at 5 p.m. to a bar and sits by himself and gets drunk. Yeah, and in his mind attached itself to that, you know, bartender's situation, that place as like a connection that they're missing in their
There was
life.
a great documentary on that. It was called Cheers, I think.
It ran for several seasons.
Yeah, it ran for like 10 years. Johnny, you saw that one, right?
I've heard of it. I'm familiar with the work. But no, I see both of that. There's guys that come in that are like that, where you're like, oh, it's this guy. And, you know, he thinks that's what he's getting out of it. But there's also, like, some of these guys, they come after, there's one guy in particular, I think he's, I think his wife died or something, but he still works. And, like, you know, he's pretty active and stuff, but he likes to come there at least a few nights a week. And I'm actually excited to see him. He's a funny dude. Yeah. He just, you know, he likes to drink a couple of beers. And,
does he come with friends? Does he come with friends too, or is that just his vibe?
No, he doesn't come with. Sometimes he meets people there from work or whatever, but most of the time he's just popping in like after the gym or whatever, and he'll have a couple of beers and play on his phone.
Yeah, good for him.
And play on his phone, but like I think he goes to church, and you know he has groups he does stuff with.
But does he seem like a happy guy?
That sounds pretty healthy.
Yeah, he seems like a pretty happy, healthy guy.
Yeah, so you're just part of his community then.
He comes more often than some other people that, like, just, you know, that they think, well, because I'm not that guy doing that at the bar, like, I'm good. And it's like, no, you're all fucked up. You're not getting what you should out of your life. You're just squandering things.
I want to transition from that. Like, we're all fucked up in some kind of way. And if you're listening to this thinking like, well, I'm not fucked up in any way, I've got it figured out.
Or thinking that we are not fucked up, we're all sorts of fucked up.
Yeah, you're also taking your lead from some fucking idiots you found on the internet, so you're clearly not the best judge of things.
Some drunk assholes
you're
on
30
YouTube.
minutes into a podcast called the Thunk Tank Podcast, so like you're kind of fucked up too.
And
we're right there with you.
Yeah, that's
we've
the
yet
point.
to declare any credentials then, like music, writing, and beer. Like that's not really.
Yeah, those are actual jobs.
Those are, and like we just vaguely like, yeah, that's what I do. Like we're not experts in our fields.
Like in what
at
context, you know?
We're not like well-known celebrities starting a podcast. We literally just told you that we have a musician, a writer, and a beer guy.
Yeah, and it's not even that like I'm a renowned beer guy where like you could go to other beer guys and be like, oh yeah, he's known amongst them. No, we're all just
you know
fucks.
Johnny, right?
Yeah, we're just all a bunch of fucking guys. So, you know, you're definitely fucked up if you're listening to this. So go ahead, Luke. I just wanted to.
So let me pull it back to the happiness question. So we're not trying to get too academic here. In fact, the whole reason I go meet Joe for a beer is to sort of like combine the vibe that beer gives you with thinking. So that's kind of the whole point of this podcast, is just to record what we do anyways. But I love when the ideas I come up with while having a beer, usually on beer 2, like I'm in the middle of beer 2.
It's beer 2.
And I'm in the golden zone, and I feel peaceful, I feel really present, and I just sort of package my life into like a neat little unit of like, all right, I'm doing okay. And I get to the same conclusions as like you might see in a philosopher or something else. Like you get like a similarly languaged like theory of life, but just from a totally different angle.
Yeah, can you share one of those?
Yeah, I can.
So what you're saying, Luke, is after a couple of beers, you think you sound more intellectual.
No, he thinks he sounds like Plato. Is what he's saying.
You think you sound more philosophical and more.
No, I'm saying that
intelligent.
No, he's saying
wow,
that's an
interesting take on that, Luke.
No, I'm saying that like I'm looking at it through a different lens, but I often get to a similar conclusion that I'll hear about in something about philosophy, something about Buddhism.
Yeah, whatever the meaning was behind what they were.
And I arrived at it through the path of like, you know, sitting at the beach having a beer, watching the water,
or sunset, or
somebody else did it by like reading like the whole human history of philosophy and coming up with some sort of like, you know, really intellectually
I see what you're saying,
bulletproof argument.
What you're trying to console is the fact of getting there that way versus getting there by just experiencing and reflecting upon what they said.
Not that I think the brain works this way, but almost like right brain, left brain. You know, there's like sort of the logically powerful intellectual way to arrive there, and then the more spiritual way to arrive there.
Yeah, sure.
And I like to find a balance of the two. So, you asked me for what I figured out of a theory of life, right?
No.
So oh, you didn't? Wait, I thought Johnny did.
Like, you just keep going.
Did I ask you that?
Well, I said, like, if I'm on
didn't.
beer 2, I figure something out, and you said, what did you figure out?
I didn't know specifically into theory of life, but that makes sense. You're right.
Well, you know, sometimes it's just like, oh, this beer's good, and sometimes I'm like, oh, man, like, I figured something out here.
So it's that figured out thing here. Okay. Gotcha.
And what I figured out is that there are a number of catchphrases, like short things that I come back to regularly when you find yourself in a stormy part of life in some kind of way, that things are too complicated to like go read a book, right? But if you have a catchphrase that reminds you like where the land is, you can get your shit back to something more grounded.
Yeah.
So like one of them I heard a comedian say, he's a comedian writer, I'm forgetting the name. He's like, I tell my kids this simple philosophy of life: try hard and be nice. It's like, that accounts for a lot.
Yeah. That will cover a lot of what you have to do in life.
Yeah, almost all of it, will fit into that grand theory, right?
Yeah.
So I like that one, but my personal one I came up with, I don't know when, it must have been years ago, but I've sort of like always come back to this, is everything is editable. So in your own mind, you have to be willing to change anything.
Do you say edible?
Editable.
Editable.
Not edible like edible weed, no. Editable. It's able to be edited. Okay. So be willing to change anything.
Right.
The process of like growing as a human means you have to burn off some of your past.
So particularly
what you thought is true.
So particularly with those worldviews or what we decide
especially
are reality.
With those, yeah,
what we decide
be
are
willing to ditch everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or change.
And then the second rule is everything seems to exist in some kind of a balance.
What does that mean?
Meaning that, you know, almost, I haven't found anything where I can be like, yes, definitely only this and not this. Like, everything seems to be
spectrums.
A spectrum of some sort of balance, and it's like, yeah, like, try hard and be nice. That's a great one. Be nice. But it's like, well, you can't be so nice that you're a pushover, right?
Or that you don't get anything for yourself, that
right.
you can't go on to do more good stuff.
So everything's a balance. If you keep the idea like, okay, I want this, but I don't want to go too far to get... So I found those 2 rules to hold true, like, pretty much any time I'm in the thicket of something, I'm like, all right, do I have to change the way I'm viewing this situation?
Yeah.
I ask myself that. And then I ask, do I just have to change the balance? Like, am I being too much of a dick here by insisting on this thing? Or am I being too flexible?
Those are some really great, I guess I would call them baseline premises to live by, right? Where everything else can kind of work into that, right?
I think the word you're looking for is tenets.
Yeah, it's sort of like an umbrella that other more specific things can fit into.
Wait, is that why they named the beer Tenants?
No, it's spelled differently. I thought so too.
Dang. It's an English beer for those of you.
No, it's not. It's a Scottish lager. Son of a bitch.
Oh, shit.
Don't call it English.
I thought they had it all...
Hey, Joe, stick to the writing,
I thought they had it all in... I thought they had it in London, though.
They did, but the brewery is in Edinburgh.
Oh, that's not the impression I got at all.
Oh man, well, just don't call Scottish. Don't tell Scottish people their shit is English. They don't like that. But
did you drop your hamburger?
No, I hit my charging cord on my phone. I almost fucked everything up. Yeah. Anyways,
so Johnny or Joe, do you have any like
Luke, you
theories of life?
I got lots of them, but Luke, you just reminded me of...
he doesn't just say like, oh yeah, I have several. He goes like full like drinking. I got lots.
I got lots of them.
Believe me, I got lots of them.
But no, I just wanted to say, fuck, now I blanked. I was trying to get it out before I forgot.
Dude, this is why I write things in my phone.
So no, Luke, when you said that, the thing about everything is editable.
Yeah.
You reminded me of a quote from a writer, Neil Stevenson, one of his characters. I think it was Roger, Lord Ravenscar, whatever. It doesn't matter what book it's from.
Yeah, that's.
But he's being accused.
You're going to get called out on the next week.
He's being accused of being
sending emails already. I just got one in unrelated to the podcast.
Anyways, is the character Roger Comstock, I think he says it, and he gets accused of not being as smart as somebody else or not as qualified, or not being as educated. And he goes, well, it's better, I consider myself educable, and it's better to be educable than educated. And I always think of that line.
Oh, I like that.
When I have those moments, Luke, where I'm like, this guy just isn't able to edit his program, and that's causing him way more
suffering,
trouble than he realizes, than if he could re-examine it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think of that line a lot.
It's how willing
I'm not
are you
educated.
to change.
Yeah. I'm not educated, but I like to think I try to learn. So.
Well, but
that's
Johnny,
that's
you're
more
more
important.
educated than people I know that have PhDs, because I think there's more to being educated than how much knowledge you have. It's how well your knowledge incorporating machine in your mind works.
So that's a perfect example. When I do in fact teach writing.
I do in fact play music.
Yeah,
and Johnny does in fact do beer.
Yeah, just so you're aware, we actually do have jobs like in our relative
They don't pay
fields.
extremely well.
No, that's why
but this doesn't
beer
pay
on
either.
podcasts.
So that's why we are doing this.
Yeah. But I mean, primarily what I teach, I teach writing. But what I'm really teaching is like you say, is honing in on that machine, those mechanisms of
filing the gears of that machine to work well.
Exactly. Whether that's producing thought, whether that's analyzing, taking information and really assessing, okay, is this quality information? Is this accurate information? Is this biased or unbiased information? What do I do with this from here?
Who's telling it? What is their motivation and intention?
And that's the students, and I have students who come back 2, 3, 4 years later, and they still tell me, this was the most important class I took in college. And
I'm sure they did.
All of them, Luke.
No, I know what you mean, because like I also think that.
But there's a reason why, and it's not because I'm sitting down and saying, all right, grammar rules, like you got to know this, and that, and that's how you make a perfect sentence.
That's their cue to tune out.
Exactly, and they will. So what I teach instead is like giving them those tools of analysis and thought.
It's almost like when you say something
that ties into self-assessment
that's true.
Yeah.
Like, a grammar rule is true, but it's not so deep that it's like...
It doesn't matter.
It's grabbing their attention.
Yeah.
but when you say something true, like, hey, folks, when you read a piece of
matters.
information that somebody writes down in a blog
that's
or
what,
a
that's
paper.
what's really important.
How do you interpret that information in the best way possible? Like, that's deeper level of truth.
Yeah.
That's going to help you out to be a cool person later in life as you like navigate figuring out what the fuck this life is.
Yeah, especially if it's something that they agree with too.
Shouldn't that be the point of like all education from
It should
all
be.
levels?
Johnny, that's why that's what I teach, because a lot of people aren't teaching it.
Too many people aren't teaching it. I'm a teacher also, like not in a public school
there's
setting.
a real need for this.
I teach private music lessons, and so I can really get into individuals' like brains and figure out how they're thinking. Not so much.
That's huge too. Is assessing what everybody needs, and
I don't see enough thinking. I don't see kids who are getting enough lessons in how to think critically and how to even...
Well, you're waiting until they're fucking 18 to be like, oh, we're going to try, like, critical thinking and self-examination. It's like, oh, really? I haven't done that before. And it's one semester of it probably... It's way too late to start on that.
It's not way too late, but it's not a good place.
It's not ideal.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
I'm not saying it's too late to be effective.
Let's be perfectly honest.
It's too late as a society to think... It's
really bad that this is how society functions.
I only started doing it in my early 20s. To be perfectly honest.
I didn't know what the hell was going on in high
I think
school.
you can help somebody arrive there. This is why I loved the book Mindful Games. Is it's sort of like, how do you like sort of provide the structures of mindfulness, and like what would you say mindfulness means? Have you how far have you gotten in that Sam Harris book, Waking Up?
Are you talking to me?
No,
Did
Joe.
you hear my burp?
Yeah, the burps are just assumed background noises.
Not that far. I think I'm like 40, 50 pages in. I started reading Confederacy of Dunces, which is a great book if you haven't read it, ladies and gentlemen.
I have not.
Oh, it's really good. I'll give it to you when I'm done.
So, like, the word mindful, like, it sort of has a definition.
He addresses this in the book?
Well, so the book is about, it's called Waking Up, a Guide to Spirituality Without Religion. It's sort of like, how do you...
it's really genuine.
Find a meaningful life. This guy spent, 3-month periods at a time on silent retreat.
The silent retreat, that's right.
I really want to do one of the 10-day retreats. No, they exist everywhere.
No, I'm just saying that like you couldn't do like a 30-day.
No, I mean, and they don't recommend it. Like you should get your first experience as maybe they say don't do a weekend because it's too short, because the first 3 days of a retreat are going to be really painful. And then they talk about it like water skiing. You're just constantly swallowing water for the first 3 days. You get up at 6 a.m. and you meditate for 18 hours or 16 hours a day, something like that. And
holy shit.
There's lectures like interspersed throughout.
Wait,
and
so they get to talk?
They get to talk and teach you. It's teaching, right? Yeah. So they say like you want to do more than 3 days, but don't jump into a month or something.
Yeah. So, well, I think he says his first one, he got nothing out of it.
He says he was miserable.
Right.
But that's interesting, right?
Well, he learned from that, though. So and he was also, I think, a teenager at the time.
Yeah.
He was like
that's a little too structured for me. I want to do one of the circadian retreats. Have you heard about those?
Nah.
It's like a radical treatment for insomniacs and stuff. People that like need sleeping pills and shit, and they have to go off them. Apparently, if you just like go live in nature or like without any artificial lighting for, I think it's 10 to 14 days, your body just resets to a circadian rhythm. Oh, that's cool. But you can't have any sort of like, you're not even allowed to use like electronics or cell phones during the day. Like it's only natural light, and your body just resets.
That's
and
cool.
You just have to be strict with it and not fuck it up the programming when you go back to your Western lifestyle.
Yeah, is there an app for that? I can just get.
Is there an app I can just?
But I would do that because that's a lot less structured. If you're like, all right, you're in the woods for 2 weeks, try to build something. Like try to make some bricks out of clay or something, because you can't use your phone. Like that's a lot. I can't sit there for 16 hours. I can't sit there for 16 hours while people smarter than me explain things I don't understand. I'd probably kill myself.
Well, so
or just get angry.
Let me give the best pitch for mindfulness I can.
Yeah.
Since this is a big angle that I like the happiness question about. Joseph Goldstein is one of the main guys that brought, let's say, Buddhism and Buddhist ideas back to the West. And he said a very simple statement that I really come back to a lot. if you want to understand your mind, sit down and observe it. And so the idea of mindfulness is a quality of mind where when you're first sitting there, you begin a mindfulness like session, meditation, by just trying to pick an anchor, something to anchor your attention to. It could be the breath. It could be the feeling of your body sitting there. It could be lots of things. I prefer the breath. I feel the sensation of the air hitting the tip of my nostrils, and that's my anchor.
That's interesting, yeah.
They also call this the spotlight of attention. And so the anchor is something that you constantly return to, and what you notice is if you sit there and try to feel your breath, let's say you set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes, you'll probably make it 2 breaths or less before your mind wanders to a thought. And then the only goal is to return to the breath. And then you wander and you return to the breath. And the first thing you learn is that your mind is constantly thinking in an insane, repetitive way. When you finally get up on the water skis, which happens with some practice, it is a practice, you get better as you do it, you actually get to this cool moment where you see a thought get born. In other words, you see a thought pop into the space of your mind before it has grabbed your attention. So previously you were sitting there thinking, I'm going to focus on my breath with my attention. And then you notice, oh my God, I'm not thinking about my breath. Yeah. I'm thinking about my to-do list. I'm thinking about whatever. And then you come back to the breath. But when you're really being mindful, and this process is called vipassana, by the way, in Buddhism, when you're being mindful, you're right there and you watch the thought appear from nowhere. It came from nowhere and just like a cloud passing through the sky popped into your view. And you have no idea where it came from or why, but you can observe it in a way, they call it metacognition. It means seeing a thought without being lost in the thought.
Right.
Seeing it actually arise. That, mindfulness definition a 4th grader gave to this meditation teacher I follow. I've read a lot of her books. She asked the 4th grader, what is mindfulness? And he said, it's not punching someone in the mouth. Basically, like when you're starting to feel angry, you notice you're angry well before the consequential actions that you might commit. So you can have a label for the different states of mind that come up. Oh, this is the angry mind. This is the jealous mind. Right. This is the stressed mind. This is the insecure mind.
Right.
And you're in a different place. You're observing all of this from a more stable place, watching the fucking wave pattern of your mental life go by.
And that should make you, that would make you by definition more objective, but that's probably a good thing, right?
I think so. It makes you less, the big concept from meditation that I again, one of these catchphrases that I keep right at my, at the ready is respond, don't react. Reactions happen.
That's great advice.
Automatically.
Yeah, that's really great advice.
Responses happen when you notice a reaction in your mind and then you decide what to do with that reaction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you don't have to hurt other people with anger. You can notice the anger and then say, okay, this is the angry mind. Right. In Buddhism, they might even call those like the different dragons in your mind.
Ooh, I like that.
You bow to the dragon, which means you give it respect.
Yeah, no, you must respect the
dragon.
Give
it respect, because that anger dragon, this ties into the other main thing I thought about leading into this episode, which is evolutionary psychology. Because Buddhism and evolutionary psychology tie in very well.
I could see that.
Evolutionary psychology basically studies like how did our brain evolve to survive. Evolution, natural selection involves surviving, right? Yeah. So how did you survive? If you're going to pass on your genes to the next generation,
you have to figure some shit out.
You have to successfully do that.
Yeah.
You have to get angry and defend your territory. You have to find
food.
When
the situation arises, you have to react to those stimuli, for sure.
Yeah, and so the basic idea is that evolution did not equip our brains to be happy.
Well, why would it?
Evolution did not equip our brains to stay happy. So we are designed for happiness to evaporate.
Well, wouldn't it equip our minds to pursue happiness?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when we find it, it evaporates so that we can find it again.
Right.
Because when you find food, you can't be so happy as to not think about your next meal.
Yeah.
That's important for survival. When you have sex, you can't be so happy as to not think about having more sex. Because, like, I don't know if you know this, Joe, but sex leads to babies.
Especially if you're a monkey.
Right.
Yeah.
And we are monkeys. Like, sorry. Like, if you don't believe in evolution and you're listening to this...
Have another beer.
Have another beer.
Yeah,
I don't
please.
know.
Give it a chance. We'll get to our evolution episode eventually. It'll be awesome.
Yeah. Stick with us
Hang
until
in
that.
there. Come on.
I
We'll get
really find a lot of inner peace when I consider the idea of evolutionary psychology. And I don't need to be perfect anymore. I don't need to worry about what I'm thinking. In other words, I allow dark thoughts to rise and fall in my mind because I know what matters is what I do with that. And if I can be mindful and say, hey, this anger mind that might be arising right now, this evolved to protect me. This is there as a way to...
Yeah, you put a context around it.
Yeah, and I bow to
sense,
it, as they say, which means you give it respect. You even love it, right? You can love, like, the dark things and then understand that evolved to protect you. Yeah. But it's like, what do you do with it?
Right. So you're so ready to see the new Star Wars movie, by the way. You're all,
God.
You're all into the dark side, man.
I'm into that sort of like the relationship between that, like dualities, let's say.
Well, that's kind of what that's all about.
Buddhism is all about like collapsing dualities. So like, whether it's good or bad or being like, in other words, death is a big one. I think death terrifies people. And it prevents them from being happy in the present moment.
I think people are
way more than they realize.
They put blinders on to it, right?
They put
in different ways.
People put blinders on to a lot of things. Like what I was just saying about mindfulness and like noticing states of your mind. If you notice those enough, the first thing you have to say to yourself is like, why would I lie to myself? This does exist in my mind. I can be honest about that. And then I choose what to do with it.
But that's the
Don't hurt people with it.
But that's the thing that other people do. They create these frameworks where they're able to then say whatever they want to themselves and convince themselves of whatever they want.
Sure.
Which is much different than what you're talking about.
But if what they're saying is like too far from reality, then reality comes crashing back in at a certain moment in their life.
But how do you... Well, and that inevitably will happen, but
which is why you have to be editable.
Well, that's why you should be.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of it, right?
That's the benefit, is that when reality... So here's one of the big themes of Buddhism. Everything changes. So if everything's changing...
Change is the only constant.
You can't make your home in something permanently, right?
Right.
So you can't live in something that's always changing.
Right.
But you can live somewhere else, right? You can live in... This is my favorite sentence... a Buddhist guy I follow named Jack Kornfield says. He calls it the wisdom of insecurity.
Jack Kornfield?
Yeah,
okay.
With a K.
Okay, just making sure, yeah.
Really amazing guy. Whenever I'm in a dark place, like I listen to him and immediately like reset the internal vibe. The wisdom of insecurity. Basically, I can't hold on to something, but I can learn how to surf. So the waves are always going to go up and down.
Which is way more fun.
But you can learn how to surf.
Yeah.
Stop swallowing water and just surf, You have to, and the idea is like you can't have good without bad. You can't be born without dying. You can't. Well, they call it the 10,000 joys, 10,000 sorrows.
What if I freeze my head though?
Yeah, that's possible. You upload yourself as a program.
Yeah,
I think
then you're just a suffering program.
You don't know that, how I feel as a program.
You're a suffering program in a meat computer right now. So.
I know. I have a wetware called a brain.
Wow, that was good.
That was good.
So,
see, I always think of things, for some reason, because I'm weird, going back to the 1600s.
Yeah, you keep going back to the Baroque.
I know. I've been thinking about that time period lately, and
hey, it's a revolutionary time period.
I've been reading. Yeah, the Enlightenment is a pretty amazing time period. I think we're at the other end of the pendulum swing from it right now. To be honest,
I would say you're not far off with that.
I feel like everyone probably thought like the fascism of the 1940s was, but I think we're still.
Well, people fought against that though.
Yeah,
like people are much more complacent today. I feel like.
Right, But I'm thinking of Gottfried von Leibniz's metaphysics. He was a pretty crazy dude.
Yeah, but he was smart.
He was smart, and he always said he had a theory of monads, which...
the monads. I remember reading
monadology. Actually, it's a debunked science now, but it was like a theoretical atomic science that is some of the things he got kind of right sound like electrons and stuff. Mm-hmm. But whatever, he was more of a philosopher than a scientist for some reason.
But didn't he co-create the calculus too?
Yeah, he invented it, but...
at the same time as Newton?
Yeah.
Is it sort of like natural selection with Darwin and Wallace?
Was it convergent evolution convergent calculus in the sense?
No, I mean, like Darwin and Wallace both independently came up with
that's
natural
what I mean,
selection.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that was weird is because Newton was insane. So when Leibniz went to publish it,
how could you not be insane at that time period?
Yeah, inventing calculus.
Yeah.
When Leibniz went to publish it, he found out that Newton had invented it like 10 years before and didn't publish it. And he's like, well, do I publish it or not? Because this guy's just sitting on it. But like, I also have calculus too. So it was a weird thing where I think he tried to publish his first, but Newton's was... It's a whole historical dispute.
They had some beef.
But they had some beef. They never squashed it. But that's why you don't hear about Leibniz, because Newton kind of won. But he talks about the two great labyrinths of the mind that when you start thinking about these things, you always get drawn down. And the first one is free will versus predestination.
Sure. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
The limitation of the human and like your own computer to reason with. Like, you know, am I in control of it or not? Because that impacts your conclusions a lot. And the other one's the composition of the continuum. Like what's going on? Like what are we? Like what's made of? And so I just always think about those two. When you talk about like evolutionary science, still you can think of it in those ways now, like 400 years later.
I like the idea of thinking of myself anytime from the evolutionary perspective of like, the base, like the more you and you don't have to be a meditator to discover this. You can just be like a thoughtful person. I think mindfulness, sitting down to do it, just gives you like a very naked view of your mind.
Well, it gives you your own platform from which to explore
start
that. Yeah.
And you can start peeling away
and that's
layers.
How you have to do
right?
it, yeah.
So you think anger is an emotion, but like when you look at anger and you peel away enough layers, you realize underneath anger is fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of death, even.
I was going to say fear of abyss or oblivion, right?
Fear of chaos, of nothingness.
Yeah.
And so one of the fundamental things of Buddhism is that, and we can get into this maybe in a whole other episode.
I think that's a whole new
but
episode,
it's the idea that the ego gives you this idea, like when you say I, when you say the pronoun I, like I'm going to the store, what do you mean?
Me, God.
Well, you mean that like you feel like a you, and you feel like you're riding behind your eyes in some sort of spaceship. Like when you don't think you're identical to your finger, because if your finger got chopped off, you would be like, my finger is gone, but I'm here.
No, I'd probably be like, ah!
Yeah, you would be screaming in pain for a bit, probably.
I wouldn't be like, it is interesting that my finger hath no longer be a part of me.
Call 911.
Yes, henceforth.
So, you feel like you're a you behind your eyes, and I've had this experience, I'm pretty sure, it's hard to say, because like, you get a glimpse of it so fast in meditation, but you do a really cool thing where you go from this spotlight of attention, like the anchor on the breath, and you make it more of a floodlight of attention. So you then open up to all awareness, but you've built up this concentration, so you're not just lost in thought. You're actually sitting there watching like this movie screen of your mind, right? And then another step you can take is to take that attention, watching thoughts as they arise, watching images as they arise in your mind, and turn it back on itself. So you hear a sound, and you might think to yourself, well, the tingling in my ankle and the sound of the bird in the tree over there are both the same thing. They're in the same place in my mind. In other words, you see that everything arises in your mind, right? Mm-hmm. And then you take it one layer further, which is you take that attention and try and locate yourself inside your mind. Turn the attention back on itself, and you try to find yourself, like this center. And you realize there is no center, and it drops away for a moment, and you're just like this, like open awareness for a second, and then like it comes crashing back in.
You're freaking me out, man.
Oh man,
that's the layers I go pretty deep sometimes, and then when I open my eyes after that, I'm like Jesus Christ, I'm
I
late
need
for
a beer.
work. I need a beer. Oh yeah.
So the answer to happiness is beer and meditation.
I would say that's a good path.
I would say, like, I would give, if you only gave me, like, less than 10 words to tell somebody, that might be the words I choose.
Yeah.
I want to say one other thing, too. In terms of sitting down, when you can notice, like, that you have to just accept, like, my mind is going to give me some dark shit, it's way easier to go forward from there. And when you pretend like you don't have dark shit, this Buddhist teacher says, it's like hiding the chocolate chip cookies when you're on a diet in your own house. Like, you know where the fuck the chocolate chip cookies are.
Yeah.
Like, if you really need to eat them, you'll go eat them. You're not
or if you
really
really don't want to eat them, you'll get rid of them.
Yeah, leave them on the counter. What's the difference?
Yeah, right.
You know, just look at them and recognize what they are. And then you actually have way more freedom in how you respond to people instead of react.
That's funny you say that, because that was sort of my solution to just eating healthy in general. And I taught my dad that with the cookies as a very tangible example where I was talking to him one day and he was asking, how do you, I just can't do it, you know, not eat cookies and candy and all this crap all the time.
Yeah.
And he said, how do you do it? And I said, well, you're probably going to have a Klondike bar after dinner, right? For dessert. And he says, yeah. And I said to him, what's the difference if you have that Klondike bar after dessert, for dessert after dinner tonight, or you don't and you have it next week?
Yeah.
And he said, well, nothing. It's just I'll have it next week. And I said, do you know what a Klondike bar tastes like? And he said, of course I do. And I
Think
said,
about it.
I said, so what's the difference? You're just waiting until the next Klondike bar.
So from the mindfulness angle, you'd be like, well, to be
worked.
that mindful, you realize you zoom out enough to be like, hey, the Klondike bar was replacing what I thought would be happy, but that's a delusion.
And it goes back to your point about you're always looking for the next Klondike bar.
Every Klondike bar is the moment before you want another Klondike bar.
Klondike bar. And I said that there's no difference. You know what it is. So what's the difference if you don't have it now? You can just remember what it tastes like, because that's going to be you right after you have the Klondike bar anyways. And he lost like 50, 60 pounds.
Yeah, he looks great.
It works. I'm telling you. Like, it's...
Yeah.
It makes sense because
you don't. We're not saying get rid of pleasure. Like,
don't
obviously,
get rid of
beer for us is pleasure.
Yeah.
I think the first step is just to recognize that is the reality.
What is
evolution
the reality?
didn't. Natural selection didn't select our brains to see reality clearly, right? And a lot of our suffering comes from not seeing reality clearly. Well, there are certainly more and less clear ways to see it. Like we said in the very beginning, you could see reality as like, my mission in life is to find a wife, to make kids, to make them...
because Jesus told me.
Well, you could have cultural reasons and explanations for it.
Well, there's plenty of them.
Behind it is really this evolutionary psychological structure that's controlling your behavior in ways that you haven't been able to unpack.
Well, it's
layers you didn't go into.
It's there regardless. If I hit you over the head and you didn't remember any of the preconceived shit you came up with or you were told,
you would still enact that.
You would still be like, I guess I'm going to make babies.
So this is the CEO model of consciousness, which is there is no CEO. Instead, there are all these modules, and they're bidding for your attention. So you don't have sex for a while. The sex module starts bidding for your attention, and you start feeling like you need to have sex more, right? You notice things sexually more.
Yeah,
maybe eating module is something that tells you, like, dude, you should focus your attention on finding a meal, right? Then there's there's all these modules.
What's the CEO doing during all of this?
Well, so the CEO is the illusion. There is no CEO.
Right, yeah.
You think you're the CEO,
right.
But in meditation, when you get deep enough and sort of just turn your attention back on, it's like the CEO looking in the mirror, he doesn't see his reflection.
Because he's a vampire.
Whoa.
Oh, shit.
Fuck.
Yeah, you got real meta there. You got real deep in the Buddhism.
So, do we want to fit in a quick, 1, 2, 3 punch of, would you rather?
I mean, we could if we have time.
It's up to Johnny's schedule.
Let's do it. Let's go for it.
Let's book it. How do we usually do it? Would you rather?
I don't think it matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
all right. I'll go first then.
Sure. Go for it.
He didn't prepare.
All right. Would you rather? Well, I have a few options actually. I'm trying to decide which one to use.
Okay.
Think of the best one, then go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Start with the best first.
Yeah, start with the best. Yeah. We may never make it through that.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Would you rather your worst fears come true. Like you go into a machine and it
As if I
figures
know
out
what they are.
Oh hell no! I know what they are. And
I know what they are. And they involve like snakes.
They involve spiders for me. Yeah,
so
lots
your
of
worst
giant
fear
spiders.
has to come true to you, or you have to watch two of your best friends have their worst fears come true to them.
Oh, second one.
Oh, well, he's trying to get us with some, like, deep, like, philosophical question that I should think about and solve or something, right?
Yeah,
And
all
have,
right.
like, moral reasoning behind
Yeah,
it.
But, yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm
Like,
joking.
we're delving
as,
into
like,
our
fellow
own
best friends,
conscious.
we're like, oh yeah, fuck that guy. Yeah.
It's like, dude, you made a deal with the wrong genie.
And Luke, guess what?
Stop going to
and
genie
Luke, guess
bars.
what? I understand.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right,
yeah.
well, you
no,
know
really,
what?
I don't know what I would pick.
Yeah. I mean,
All right.
in the moment, you know, who
In the
knows?
moment, I would probably pick me as a default and just think, like, that's one less human suffering.
Nah,
Yeah, but
I would
snakes,
pick you
bro.
as a default and think.
Yeah, but, like, am I going to make it out the other side? Do I know that? Or is it, like, literally coming
Yeah,
true?
no, I mean, spiders would have to, like, devour me in order for this to come true, so I wouldn't
Then
survive it.
I guess, see, that's where it falls apart, because then that would have to happen, and that you're dead in a horrible way. You'd rather
Yeah, so
watch.
I'd rather assume that Luke's worst fears are, I don't know, he runs out of beer and has to, like, drink wine or something. I don't know.
Also, like, does it
I don't know
count
what your
as your
worst
worst
fears
fear? If, like, I find with fear, like, it's one of those things you can go in your mind and unpack, and then when you, like, do it enough, you can actually rewire your brain to be like, I think fear is wired into the brain as sort of, we haven't figured out this problem, so you better stay aware of it. Like,
Whoa.
bunnies haven't figured out
Yeah.
how dogs work, so they're very aware and ready to run away, right?
Yeah, because they're like, that's not a fucking bunny.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
That thing is
Yeah.
weird.
It's a monster.
Humans have not... We figured out how lots of animals work, and I don't have a fear of pigs. But I do have a fear of snakes, because I don't know how they fucking work. And they have
You also
no
don't know what
emotion
they're up
behind
to.
their eyes. They're just slithering along, and they don't... You can't get any of that mammal, like data collection. You just see, like, a machine. That's why they scare me.
No,
Which really
they
means...
they scare you because snakes have been around longer than mammals, so we evolved to be like, yeah, don't fuck with those things that
Well,
don't have
no, I
legs.
agree with you from an evolutionary perspective. I mean, like, when I'm psychologically trying to figure out why I'm scared of them from the top down.
Mm.
From the bottom up is always evolution, because we evolved from the inside out, you know? So, like, our fear of snakes runs all the way back to when we were, like, little monkey creatures, like, roaming around in the trees and having to keep a checkout for snakes, like, slithering along on the forest floor.
Right.
So, I mean, you ever see those videos where they put a cucumber next to a cat?
No.
Yeah.
They put a cucumber behind a cat
Yeah.
while it's eating or something, and then when the cat's just, like, chill and, like, sort of turns around, its body, like, springs and they just jump up 6 feet.
Well, because
Why
cats
cucumber?
can fuck up a lot of
'Cause they
animals,
think
but
it's a snake.
snakes can.
Oh,
yeah,
shit.
a snake can fuck up a cat. Just I think
And
that's-
so the
That's
cat's,
fucked up.
like reaction to that survival mechanism is to spring up so fast, you don't even see how they do it.
Right.
But, like, what else could get out of the way
Because-
fast enough of a snake about
Because
to
the
go...
cats that didn't do that got snaked.
Exactly. And
Well, that's
so,
why
like, one of
those,
the cats did it, like, 3 feet, and, like, the snake was still, like, got you. And then
Yeah.
one of the cats finally got high enough, and, like, those cats, like, banged more other cats and made more cat babies that sprung.
I'm gonna totally
Well,
write
that was a beautiful sentence. If you actually write that out as a full sentence.
Yeah, is
So
that part of your-
somebody in the comments, please do that, because I would really like to see that as a full sentence, please.
I want to walk into like a speaking, like a lecture at a hall, and that's the sentence that's being said. Like, as I'm
I would
Just
running in
open
late-
with that.
That's
cold
where I would,
open.
like, find a seat really quick and just take out my notepad. You know,
Yeah.
like, you
Like,
go into
shit,
where
what
you
I
might take
missed?
your time
Yeah.
sitting. That's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm missing the best part.
Well-
I would pick myself, but I think that Would You Rather does open up, like, a cool conversation about,
Sure,
like,
yeah.
like, what is fear? Like, let me unpack fear, and you can go layers and layers
But it
further.
might not. It might also not be something that you've even been totally
Yeah,
cognizant.
yeah,
of.
you're not
Well,
filling in
most
a
of those
box.
things you're not cognizant of until you put the spotlight of attention on it,
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
speak, and, like, really unpack it. Like, that's one of the great things, again, to come back to the meditation thing, is that you can, the more layers deep you pick apart your own mind and become mindful of, like, you
Yeah.
learn how it works,
Yeah.
you aren't as surprised by what's happening in your mind.
Mhm.
You're like, oh, of course, I have this jealous part of my mind that enacts when I learn this kind of information. I have this anger part that happens whenever I combine not eating enough with like being late for something, or whatever it is.
And do you feel like that's knowing that or being conscious of that and aware of that is more of an advantage then?
I think so.
I would say so.
I think you're less tossed around. Your ups,
you're less sort of
and downs are less extreme.
You're less tied to those.
You're living in a different place.
Yeah, those compartments controlling you.
I'd rather see you in better living conditions, as they say. Like, don't live in this
Who says that?
A Buddhist teacher.
Okay.
It's like live in a nicer room in the house. You know.
All right, I got one more. Then I got a better one. Give me one more shot.
No. I was trying to say that's a really good one.
I have one more question, Johnny, Mr. Genie. What if I choose?
Be respectful to the genie, otherwise he'll come back and give you.
And this is why I'm being respectful, because my question is, what in this particular case, if I choose neither, what happens?
Oh yeah.
All three of your worst fears happen.
Okay, fair enough.
You and your two best
boilerplate genie rule.
Yeah, you just wanted people to understand why you guys have to pick one. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Don't think of us like bad people for playing this genie game. Not choosing is always worse.
Not choosing is mostly.
Now, what if somebody's only listening to episode 2 and they didn't hear episode 1? In the Would You Rather segment, Johnny is a genie, so we have to pick one.
Well, yeah, you essentially
that's
have to
the
pick
basic.
one, yeah.
That's the.
You're better off picking one.
You're better off picking one. Yeah. The third option's always worse.
Third option's at least as bad as both of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like that one. I don't think you have to give another one. Like,
yeah,
I was trying to say that, like,
I really like that one.
I might keep thinking about it and see what happens, but I would choose myself. But I think it's just cool. You can, like, maybe if you unpacked your worst fear deep enough, you could, like, let go of it, right? Like, I used to be scared of the dark because I realized I'm not sure what's in the dark. And so my monkey, like, lizard brain is just like, be cautious about the shadows because anything could be there.
I love how you define your mind as monkey lizard brain.
Well, but, like, it's like monkey, like, less far back and lizard way farther back.
That's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the cool part. You can trace the evolutionary psychology, like Buddhism line, all the way back to the basic idea of something that's alive. It comes down to
comes from a lizard.
Well, it comes down to this duality even earlier than that, which is you are attracted to certain things and you repel from other things. Bacteria do this, right?
Okay.
It goes towards certain things that are beneficial to its survival, like...
Oh, it's more reactionary in that sense.
And then it moves away from things. And this is the basic condition of human suffering, is that we're constantly trying to move away from suffering and move towards happiness. And the Buddhist angle would be like, you're riding the wave right where you are right now, just like enjoy surfing. Don't think of where the beach that you're surfing towards. Right.
So then really, isn't it more Buddhist to just hedonistically enjoy life and just like party?
Yeah, I mean that's a definite criticism I think it gets. It sort of gets also a criticism of being too
It's not a criticism. Pacifist. I think that's how I'm doing it. I think that's
No, but I would stand behind saying that I think if more people did that, the world would be a much better place. We might not have like hyperloops and like subway systems and stuff. Without certain amounts of anxiety and sort of neuroticism in society, like people driving to build a better tomorrow. I think that's an important part of our minds too. But we can just keep it in check a little bit and just enjoy whatever is true of your life in the present moment. And realize that suffering is just the other side of the coin to happiness. And you can't have one without the other.
Well, and it's like you say, there's that, it comes back to that duality, right? Where, I mean, inevitably, you're born, you live, and you die.
As Carl Picklington
unless of course, you freeze your head.
Unless you freeze your head, is Joe really, I'm not a genie. Joe found a way around my Buddhist pitch. Yeah. What'd you say, Genie?
But see, this comes back to freedom versus predestination. You don't think it does as often as
I think it does. It does too, yeah.
Because you're saying that, there is bad with good. Like, you have to be, like, to real happiness, you need, like, you're not free. You don't truly have free will then. Because you can't just keep pressing the button.
free will anyways.
I don't
but
either. Yeah.
I think
So
it's
then
not
what's
a
the
black or
point?
white switch. I think it's a
What do
sliding
you mean?
scale.
What's the point? I like beer. That's the point.
What's the point of what, Johnny?
Of analyzing yourself and being so mindful if you're ultimately not in control
I
of
think
it.
of it this way: if I could
well-
imagine a state of the world and all the 7 point whatever billion people on it as being as miserable as possible, where every single person is suffering as much as possible, and then I can envision the opposite of that as a concept where all those people are living the best possible life. And if we don't know what the universe is, we don't know what human life is, we don't know the deep questions about life. I don't trust anybody that says they do, right?
Yeah.
And in that not knowing, which is another Buddhist like idea of like you sit in the not knowing, you make your home there. Don't try and make your home in the knowing, because then when more not knowing comes crashing in, like, you're fucked, your home's ruined, and you got to move again.
Right.
Try to like live permanently in that other place. Where was
All right, so
I don't
the
know
next
where you're
segment.
going with that.
On to the next segment. Which one of you fuckers?
Oh, Johnny
is
was
up?
saying, what's the point? Sort of like the nihilism thing. It's
yeah.
well, I'd rather it be less miserable for people than more miserable, right?
Well, I think I have a fact or fiction for you.
Oh,
Ooh.
shit.
I believe so. Oh yeah, I do. Okay. So here's what's gonna happen.
We're about done with this growler, by the way, so we're pretty
we
thunked
really?
at this point. Yeah.
Oh man, hold on. Let me grab a beer then before you do this. 1 second.
That's not how this works.
Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Jesus Christ. I was gonna say about what you were saying before though. J.R.R. Tolkien, he has this whole thing in Lord of the Rings where the elves are actually envious of the humans who are mortal. Because
the elves are envious of the humans because they're mortal.
the elves are immortal, and that eventually they consider it a curse. Whereas men, the fact that men are mortal, they refer to it as the gift of men.
Right.
Because they're able to live their lives, do what they have to do, and then
because to be an elf in that scenario, you're born, but to be immortal is almost like there's something off about the balance of your being.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that ties into a lot of what you're saying. And I know Tolkien. He was Catholic, I believe.
I think even
Joe, what you just said
Catholicism can become very Buddhist in ideas.
Wait, Joe, what you just said is a very Christian idea. That's part of why Lucifer got so angry. It was humans got free will.
Well, that happens in the
and
Silmarillion
mortality
too.
What?
The Silmarillion is full of that. Those Christian theological.
Yeah, Tolkien just straight
too.
up lifted that right from the Christianity. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So here's your.
So here's Joe's fact or fiction.
Fact or fiction. So speaking of wealth and happiness and greed and all that good fun stuff that we love so much, so this might have to be a thunk correction at some point.
Oh God.
Because I found a lot.
Baby.
I found.
If you don't stop talking, I'm going to get a thunk correction right now.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
You don't have one yet?
So.
Oh, I have a full-on thunk right now. I got a thunk trunk. I got a full thunk trunk going here.
Did you just say a full thunk trunk?
Oh yeah, baby. Yeah.
We're gonna use that somehow. Thunk trunk. That's gold.
This may be the intro we were talking about. So I found the reason I say that is because I found conflicting numbers on this because it seems like a hard number to gauge, and the number is the United States federal poverty level. So or poverty line. So basically the U.S. whatever Department of whatever that comes up with this number.
Labor statistics.
Yeah, it comes up with a number that they call
the Ministry of Magic for that.
The ministry, the U.S. Ministry of Go Fuck Yourself comes up with this number called the poverty line. And basically, if you make less than that amount of money per year, you're considered somebody who lives in poverty, I guess. Yeah. And they actually use it as a tangible gauge to say, like, oh, if you make...
They say what is reasonable, like, where somebody shouldn't be...
Well, they use it for, like,
tax
for government. Yeah, exactly. And like, like Medicaid or something. Or, where they'll say, oh, if you're...
Why are you pointing at me when you said Medicaid?
Just because maybe it's something you should look into.
I have it.
So... But yeah, so if you make 200% of the poverty line, you can apply for this program or government assistance or whatever. So the number I found, and again it was difficult to find, so correct me if I'm wrong, was around 15,000 And that's after taxes. That's like your like money that you get for working for the year.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right. So,
which is hard to live on.
Exactly, and that's when you would be considered in poverty. So the fact or not is that making the U.S. or making like per year the U.S. poverty line, like that's your income, you live on the U.S. poverty line, puts you in the top 10% wealthiest people on the planet.
Living within the U.S. poverty line puts you in the top 10%?
Living from the poverty line or higher.
Yeah. Puts you where? In
the top 10% wealthiest people on the planet.
I think that's true.
You think that's true?
Yeah, I think I heard somebody give a stat once where they said, oh God, here comes a thunk trunk now. A future thunk trunk. No, they said that like just living in North America, in whatever context you're living, you're in the richest 1% of the world.
Among other people's, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you compare, even, sharing a crowded apartment, in a shitty part of New York City or something.
How's that possible? Because there's like 500 million people in North America. There's only 7 billion people on the planet. So how can we all be in the 1% or 10%? That
well,
makes sense.
Johnny, what do you think?
I don't know. Maybe I just made a thunk.
It was terrible math. Yeah, sorry, Luke. I don't want to have to talk about it next week. We can just point it out.
We can just address it here.
I think it's true. I just need to. Maybe I worded it slightly wrong.
Well, but the statistic is that
you're in the top 10%.
Top 10% if you make
just over the poverty line.
Like at the poverty line.
The point I was trying to make is I remember the stat I heard being like, just like last week's one, what I remembered was it was shocking. I just didn't remember the details. Right. So I think if it's shocking in the same way, that's why I'm thinking like it's true.
Yeah. So Johnny, what do you think?
I would also say it's true. It's probably like top 5% or something.
Oh, interesting take.
It's probably smaller than the 10%. It's probably
all right. So that's interesting you say that, Johnny, because not only are you both correct, if you make the U.S. poverty line, you are within the top 10% wealthiest. That means that everybody else on the planet
is the 90.
For you, there's 9 other people who make less money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're making the U.S. poverty line.
Yeah.
But it's actually even more than that because you're actually in the top about 7.8%. Which means out of 100 people, about 93 make less money than you do, which is fucked up.
Which is another Buddhist principle: gratitude.
But see, that's the mo money, mo problems thing, because you don't give a fuck about what someone in Africa is living like. But you care that you live in a shithole on the shitty side of town.
I have a feeling
you drive through the good side. That's what you see. You want to be there.
Well, a lot of this is relative, right? When you talk about happiness,
it's always relative.
Yeah,
it's a balance. Like I was saying before, it's always a sliding scale of something.
Right.
That's in the sense, in that like frame of thought, I'm thinking to myself, if I won the lottery and I had like millions of dollars, I feel like my psychology would take on more of the world's suffering. Like right now, I'm just like distracted enough, just
well, you would have
being
the
a human myself.
Yeah.
But knowing that you have the resources, you're like, okay, I have to like actually absorb and think about what should I do with this?
Yeah.
What could I do?
What could you do? Yeah,
I have to take on more.
You have a lot more potential in that sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Joe?
Fuck.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait. So I guess I have one too. It's not going to be as much of a rant as the electron fact last week.
Oh, the peanuts and the baseball.
But I just kind of wanted to connect like what we were talking about. Yeah, exactly.
That was good.
The baseball-sized peanut. Yeah.
Yeah, the baseball-sized peanut. If you haven't heard that, you should probably go listen to episode 1 and donate and subscribe.
Yeah, we should make a donate.
Are those options?
We don't have a way to get money.
There's no way for us to get money, is there?
You can subscribe.
You could, that's an option.
Definitely subscribe.
Yeah, definitely subscribe and share
and donate. Once we make a donate.
We make a donate.
We're trying to just get enough money to like pay for like hosting the podcast somewhere because you have to like put it on a hosting service that it's usually like $5 to $10 a month.
You can't just make an app for that, or can you?
If we just break even with that and the cost of the beer, we're in business.
Yeah,
that'll keep us motivated to keep talking.
Keep doing it. Yeah,
I think that's fair.
as long as we get a baseball-sized amount of
Peanuts.
Yeah.
Is that your science fact?
We can eat. No, so it's not so much of like a singular fact, but just a cool idea that sort of ties in with the whole modular model of the mind that you might discover, like from evolutionary psychology, that there are these different modules and they're all bidding for your attention. Well, there's a certain condition called split brain patients where they have to get the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere detached.
Oh, shit.
Through the corpus callosum. It's like this like bundle of nerve fibers, like probably in the billions. And in order to prevent seizures, like they cut the connection between the two hemispheres.
Oh, shit.
And then they do these funny experiments. So like it's reversed. So like the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body and vice versa. So they can do these experiments where they show the right eye something and the left eye something else. And
it crosses.
then they ask questions to the people. However, your language centers are located in your left hemisphere most of the time. Not everybody, but I think most of the time. And your right hemisphere is usually things more like music and like spatial awareness and like faces, you know. And so they'll show an object like a spoon to the right eye, which tells the left hemisphere, like, I saw a spoon, right?
Right.
And when you ask them, did you see an image on the screen? They say, I saw a spoon.
Right.
If they reverse that, they say, you didn't put anything on the screen.
Oh, because it just doesn't make the connection.
But if they're left hand,
yeah,
if they're asked to pick up an object with their left hand from a group of objects, they pick up a spoon.
What if you use like a fork instead?
It doesn't work with forks. No, the idea is that like the communication between their right side and their left side got screwed up. So when you ask them to talk, they're using their left side with the language centers and saying what they saw. If they didn't see it with the left side says,
right,
I didn't see it. It's you talking,
right,
but you did see it.
Right.
And there's proof that you saw it because your other side picks up a spoon.
Wait, but they have to slice your fucking brain in half to do this?
This is for patients that happen to have this done for medical reasons like seizure conditions, epilepsy.
Yeah.
Because it stops certain,
right.
Like seizures from getting worse or happen, whatever the thing is.
Seizure signals.
And it just happens to show that you end up getting these two like local clusters of consciousnesses, two of them in your head that don't really agree.
Right.
And I would argue that it's not just two. It's probably that if you looked at those two feelings of center, you would go down the tree and find more local things.
Yeah, right.
And this is the modular model of consciousness where you're thinking, okay, my mind is actually like this conglomeration of different modes of being, and
what the fuck?
Sorry, go on. I'm listening.
And then the center of it is just sort of like this feeling of being a CEO, and all these modules are competing for your attention. And the split brain experiments kind of show that, whoa, consciousness might not be this like centered thing. There might be a lot more going on.
Oh, Genghis Khan.
What?
You're supposed to say Genghis Khan who?
So anyways, we should
knock,
probably...
Knock. I opened with knock knock.
Oh, Genghis Khan.
Oh, yeah.
You forgot about that?
I forgot about that.
Good, because I don't have an answer.
We should end this episode. We've had a growler of beer.
Did we finish the growler?
Yeah, we finished the growler.
We killed the growler?
I assure you we finished the growler.
Shit.
See, I think
All right, folks, that's our take on happiness for now.
Yeah, and beer.
I think we nailed it.
We really knocked it out of the park,
If you're going to take away anything, it's maybe experiment with some meditating. Apparently, Luke likes it.
And beer.
Maybe experiment with some beer, but not too much. Don't be the miserable drunk guy at a bar.
No, be responsible.
Drink responsibly.
Yes.
And happiness is just a moment before you need happiness.
And beer is just a moment before you need more beer.
Which we need right now.
Yeah, we do.
We're out. We finished the growler,
So thank you, and we'll see you for episode 3.
Episode 3, yeah.
Episode 3, that's right.
Should we give Johnny a chance to hang up on us? Or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Johnny?
Did he hang up?
I don't think so.
I think he did.
No, I can hear him.
I can't hear him.
I see his, like, cow face.
What does that mean?
His Skype, like, picture. It's a
Oh
cow.
my god, you're right. It is a cow face. What is that? It's like a holy cow.
There he
Oh, that
goes.
son of a bitch. Okay.
All right, we will see you episode 3.
Thank you.